Namaskar, hello and welcome viewers. You're watching this special presentation of Sansad TV, Bills and Insight, your one-stop destination for views, news and analysis of proposed legislations of India that have far-reaching implications and impact your life. I'm your host Kriti Mishra, and today the spotlight is on the weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems, Prohibition of Unlawful Activities Amendment Bill 2022. This bill was passed by the Lok Sabha during the last session of Parliament. Before the detailed analysis, let's take a look at the highlights of the bill. The bill amends the Weapons of Mass Destruction and their Delivery Systems Prohibition of Unlawful Activities Act 2005. The bill bars persons from financing any prohibited activity to weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. It empowers the centre to freeze, seize or attach funds, financial assets or economic resources for preventing such financing. So what are weapons of mass destruction and why did we need this amendment bill? Well, these are weapons with the capacity to inflict death and destruction on such a massive scale and so indiscriminately that its very presence in the hands of a hostile power can be considered a grievous threat. Modern weapons of mass destruction are either nuclear, biological or chemical weapons, frequently referred to collectively as NBC weapons. The term weapons of mass destruction has been in currency since at least 1937, when it was used to describe mass formations of bomber aircraft. The need to amend the Act has arisen from the fact that in recent times, regulations relating to proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems by international organizations have expanded. And for discussing the provisions of the bill, I'm joined by an illustrious panel of guests. Joining us in the studio, Lieutenant General PJS Pannu, retired, former General Officer commanding Ladakh and former Deputy Chief of Indian Integrated Defence Staff, Dr. Sheel Sharma, former Ambassador. And also joining us in the studio, young and vibrant audience. I welcome all of you on Sansad TV and thank you so much for joining us. And before we commence our discussion, here's how our parliamentarians discuss this bill in the Lok Sabha.
एंथ्रेक्स लेस्ड लेटर्स ऐसा भारत में भी हो सकता है। देश की सरकार की जिम्मेदारी होती है कि देश के नागरिकों को सुरक्षित रखना।
What type of treaty we are going to enter with other countries? Suppose these countries are not in our line. What will be the solution? What will be the purpose of these legislations? I am having my own doubt.
In Japan alone, in the year 1945, August 6th and August 9th, we have seen that 66,000 people have instantly died and 160,000 people have to die due to the radiation by the end of that year. So this is the mass destruction by these weapons.
The purpose of this exercise is to make a very specific change in law, additionality in law, so that this country's record, this country's reputation, this country's security is ensured by financial measures which the government is in a position to take.
And also, I'd like to tell our viewers that United Nations Security Council's targeted financial sanctions and the recommendations of the Financial Action Task Force have mandated against financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems. In that context, General Pannu, help us understand the importance of the bill.
Kriti, when a bill is passed, obviously there are certain fears that weapons of mass destruction, which worldwide are known to be hugely devastating to humanity, whether used by a country and versus when used by a non-state actor. It means there is nothing that a state can be blamed for. The state can completely disclaim it, but yet large amount of humanity can suffer at the hands of non-state actors or anti-national elements. As far as technology is concerned, the technology has been advancing in a manner that at the end of Second World War, the war would not have ended if America had not actually used weapons of mass destruction, throwing atom bomb in Japan. And ever since then, the world has witnessed the devastation that it can cause, and United Nations came into being. As today we talk about the war which is happening between Ukraine and Russia has also been speaking about that they can go nuclear. because it is a strategy to hold the threat of potentially bringing to fore weapons of mass destruction and then hold and blackmail and use that as deterrent to win a war. But what is happening is today the United Nations, which actually came up post the Second World War, use of weapons of mass destruction, are really worried that nations who are formally known to possess weapons of mass destruction and those formally not known to possess mass destruction weapons are holding them. But miniaturization in technology, the hybrid war situation, which is not only these two states fighting, but non-state actors also join in as terrorists. The technology has a lot of funds which are moving around in the dark web, in the cryptocurrency coming in, where you can have no traces left to understand what the financial deal is happening. Unless strictures are passed and strong laws are brought in, it is very important to understand that today's technology can miniaturization, the hybrid war situation, the terrorism, all put together can create a very, very devastating situation, which I think not only India, but I think the whole world should be concerned. And therefore, it is not only the Indian law, I think the international law and the world body has to come together to make sure that the NBC, in fact, today we are even talking about radiation. So CBRN, radiological weapons are also there. Some make noise, many don't. COVID did not make noise, but look at the mass destruction that it caused.
True.
This can be termed as biological warfare. Well, the jury is out on it. But chemical warfare, even a pharmaceutical industry, can actually create something which you would not know whether it exists or not. It will be some gas, mustard gas, or there are far too many things. So when you don't know that pollution plus all that is impacting the human health system can start deteriorating very rapidly, not only the soldiers in the battlefield, but I think all over in the hinterland, a nation can suffer at the hands of either chemical weapons or biological weapons, radiological, and of course, the worst is overt use of a nuclear bomb, of which the world has witnessed.
All right, General Pannu, I'll just borrow your sentence, non-state actors. Ambassador Sharma, as we're talking about non-state actors, a very important point here that this bill will be very crucial in preventing transfers to these non-state actors, such as terrorists?
Yes, actually this bill, it empowers government domestically to take very stiff action and punitive action against people who are involved in helping proliferation. Those who might be doing it in the past quietly, giving funds to non-state actors or criminals or people who are not entitled to do this, and then saying we are not involved. Like, we have our great neighbor on the west side. About terrorism, they use the state for promoting terrorism and then say we are not involved. So this has been a fear which has been stalking the world ever since there are two historical points. One is that the breakup of Soviet Union. When Soviet Union broke, there was enormous nuclear weapons there.
Yes.
And the state was weak. Their financials had been weakened. So one of the fears that the world had was that those countries who want to clandestinely build nuclear weapons might get it from the rump states of the Soviet Union. And there were cases in Europe in the 90s where in Germany and Holland and in Italy, they would have found people carrying some amounts of uranium or plutonium. And that sent a scare that these can fall in the hands of terrorists and they can make a bomb, or at least make a radiological bomb, which can damage a city square and frighten people. So then they started this whole process of controlling the export and spread of these not only weapons but materials and technology. There are all kinds of materials in chemicals, for instance. There are a whole list of chemicals which can be used for making bombs, chemical weapons. Same way in biological weapons, there is, you have these microorganisms can be, so they have to control them. And third is the nuclear, where it has the enriched material, enriched uranium, they have plutonium, then how to make the bomb, the whole technology. So all of this has to be controlled. So export control became the watchword. India joined that whole process and we put effective export controls. And the WMD Act of 2005 was actually our parliamentary decision to enact laws against, violation of export control.
Right. Right, sir.
And we that act is comprehensive. It it has a catch-all provision, which
Right.
means anyone trying to do this will be caught and will be punished. Then, since then, we also became members of these global export control regimes like MTCR, Missile Technology Control Regimes. We also are members of the Australia Group, which controls chemicals and biological pathogens. We are also members of the Wassenaar Agreement.
Yes, sir.
Then NSG was one area where we wanted very much, but the Chinese have been blocking us. But most of the NSG members want India to be in.
Right.
And why we should join it? Because we have the entire range of technology from mining to waste disposal, the entire fuel cycle of the nuclear reactors and nuclear bombs. We have mastered it. We have, Atomic Energy Commission and our Atomic Energy Agency and our atomic establishment is competent in these areas. So, and it is respected worldwide because for these things. So they all expect India to be as scrupulous as other countries are in controlling this.
Right.
So the latest act is, is plugging in one particular area of the WMD Act of 2005. That area is about financing. It did not spell out in 2005 how to control financing.
Right.
So this one again is a comprehensive amendment which covers all aspects of financing of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction.
Ambassador Sharma, we're talking about the indigenous legislation. Let's also get a global perspective on this. The use of chemical, biological and nuclear weapons is regulated by a number of international treaties and agreements. Among them are the Geneva Protocol 1925, the ban and the use of chemical and biological weapons, the Biological Weapons Convention of 1972 and Chemical Weapons Convention of 1992, which put a comprehensive ban on the biological and chemical weapons respectively. But General Pannu, the question is of compliance.
Kriti, yes, warfare is a very interesting subject, and as they say, all is fair in love and war. And therefore, when you go to war, you have to start with the best practice of not engaging in any act where there is a collateral damage to the innocent civilian population. Then what do you do? How do you win a war? And in our times now that the war is on between Russia and Ukraine,
Yes.
I think initially it was all being said that we are going to comply, we are not going to attack cities, we are not going to harm anybody. But all of a sudden, when the Russian forces found themselves in a bind that there is a resistance which came from the citizens, then there was a confusion there. They could not draw a distinction between the rights and the wrongs, but for the simple reason that if the non-state actors actually are legitimized by the state, like Pakistan does, even North Korea holds a bomb and threatens, even though North Korea is not in direct confrontation with any other country. But why do they flaunt their nuclear weapons and missiles? For the simple reason that states like China have kept another states which are their non-state actors, Pakistan on one side and North Korea on the other side. So if you want to look that you're playing by the rules, but you can ask somebody else to do the bid for you, which is proxy. So therefore, when you talk about proxy war is, okay, let me be a good person. I will play by the rules, but I will use my proxies to break the rules. And then there is a good terminology called deniability, that I did not do it, but somebody did it, and you can even say sorry. Because A, you did not do it, and then you can cover it through diplomacy and through other political manifestation or through media. And I think information warfare today create so much of psychological impact on the minds of people because people cannot distinguish between the right, the wrong, the lawful and unlawful, because then the whole lot of mind space is occupied by justifications, by stories, and therefore a human mind gets confused. And today I think chaos theory is something that we need to understand. Chaos theory by itself is a mode of attack. If you dislocate somebody's mind, disorient somebody's mind, you have generally made a person incapable of understanding the difference between right and wrong, and all rights will look wrong, and all wrong can be made to look right. So therefore, that is a law, or the lack of law that I can talk about.
All right. So the complexity of the situation, Ambassador Sharma, as General Pannu is pointing out, the current situation, advances in drone technology, biological weapons in lab, Russia-Ukraine war, geopolitical situation. I want to understand about the timing of the bill. Do you think it's a very well-timed bill?
Yes, it was because the concern about this proliferation of weapons of mass destruction and their devastating impact has been mounting, and global organizations like the Australia Group, for instance, they have been revising their guidelines and their restrictions, and other states like European Union and US, Canada, Japan, they have been also making their laws more strict. We are members of these, like Australia Group and some of these organizations. The UN itself, Security Council, made an act in, again, it was 2004, it is the Resolution 1440 and subsequently 1447, where it mandated that all states have to make domestic laws so that these things cannot go unpunished or uncovered in their domestic processes. So that's why this process we have taken on. We have been playing ball with the global concerns about these things, and we are our message is of being a very responsive country which sees these concerns very intimately. So that's why we change our laws. We also bring them up to date. So this is an ongoing process, and the latest amendment actually brings our WMD Act on par with the global restrictions and global laws. Another thing I want to mention is that these, though we have these, as you mentioned about these agreements, like Geneva Protocol, 100 years are completing in 3 years' time, but still chemical weapons exist. We have biological weapons and their agreement. Then between Russia and the US, they've had a lot of bilateral agreements. The thing is that all these agreements take a lot of time to negotiate. Today we are at a world where suddenly there is a certain frustration with negotiations. And after you have an agreement, how do you implement it?
Exactly.
So implementation is domestic. So how do you implement it domestically? By laws. So the whole appeal is that you make domestic laws voluntarily, unilaterally, and make them as strict as though you were part of an agreement.
Ambassador Sharma, when this bill was discussed in the Lok Sabha, few members pointed out that it could also result in mistaken identity for people in specific sectors involved in specific activities. What's your stand on that?
Well, any law can have the what you call double edge, but our legal processes are actually mature enough to discriminate between these things, and when the matters come to the court, they actually they make it threadbare, because otherwise, in this whole field of weapons of mass destruction, dual-use technologies have been there from the beginning of the last century.
Right.
And the same nuclear material can be used for making power reactors, which provide electricity, and it can be enriched and made into a bomb.
True.
But you discriminate between them and see. So there's a competent authority, there are competent panels, and our judicial processes, when they need something specific to be done, then they set up a panel, which comprises experts in that area,
Yes.
And then they go into it. Like, for instance, you have tax authorities. Now, our High Court and Supreme Court don't go into this. They have tax panels, which go into these things. Same way, other aspects of our nation, other aspects of our governance, they require expertise to be drawn in. And our legal processes allow that.
And effective implementation, of course.
And effective implementation. So, this ambiguity cannot prevent us from making strict laws. Strict laws are necessary.
Right, right. Absolutely. And before we take the questions from our audience, General Pannu, the importance of the bill in fortifying India's position globally and also strengthening India's security.
Kriti, very interesting aspect that we are talking about, that firstly internalizing your own responsibilities by having a domestic law. I think when India is seen as a nuclear power or nuclear weapon power, it also comes with the responsibility that it has to be a responsible nuclear power. And then you have to go through the doctrinal process where you are putting in public domain as to how you would use your nuclear weapons. And India has a policy of no first use, NFU. Now, why do we publicly put this out as no first use? On the other hand, you must have a second and third strike triad, that you must be able to strike back if you are attacked by somebody. If you don't have the second strike capability, then there can be a big debate that, if you are stuck, then you are completely gone, and how would you strike? Yes, so you have to invest in second and third strike capability, and we have a triad in place, so therefore we are more responsible. So as a result, I think we fear none, but what we are importantly conveying to people is we are responsible, not only as far as the nuclear capable state, but also as far as the CBRN, the radiological, the biological weapon, of course, is now more spoken in the last 2 years, and everybody knows why, because of COVID.
Of course.
And also chemical conventions, for the simple reason that today your industry uses a lot of chemicals. It is a mix of those chemicals can be weaponized. Your industry uses a lot of pharmaceutical products, and all those labs can actually bring in something which can be bad for a human body, and vectors being thrown out and a disease which can be used as a weapon can also be used. So as a result, when you make sure that it's like saying, you detoxify your own system before you suggest and prescribe to the world to detoxify their system. And I think for us, it's very important that we have a non-state actor state, which is Pakistan. So I think we are also telling them, you detoxify your thing and then we can live peacefully.
And of course, so we are telling the world that we behave and we act very responsibly.
Yes.
On that note, let's take some questions from our audience.
Immediately after the passing of UN Security Council resolution, within 1 year, we passed this Act of 2005, preventing weapons of mass destruction. But as you, sir, mentioned that we are having a Western neighbor and its condition is very fragile in terms of its political structure, and its weapons of mass destructions are, highly probable in the hands of non-state actors.
Exactly.
So as the situation in Afghanistan has drastically changed, so what impact will it have on the weapons of Pakistan, and how can the international community compel Pakistan to fulfill its international obligations as India did?
Ambassador Sharma, you'd like to take that?
There is something called Financial Action Task Force, which is a body based in Paris. That task force has put Pakistan on a grey list because of its non-conformance to these, financing of terrorism. That's one big area, and Pakistan was found wanting in that area. So they have been under pressure for the last 3-4 years. And Pakistan's, AKAs, their backers, China and Turkey, have been trying to say that please take them out from the grey list. But every time, twice a year they meet, and every time they are put on the F. So why? Because their conduct is suspect. So it is not easy to hoodwink the world. You can, you can, as a good old saying, you can fool the world once, but not all the people all the time.
Sir, courts, governments and agencies can go wrong. Let's say, what if General Pannu is taken as a mistaken identity? What remedy will you provide to him, the government?
I believe both of you, sir, mentioned that there could be certain non-actors, there could be certain anti-nationals that could use cryptocurrency or dark web as a means of mass destruction. So how does this bill address this problem?
There is a catch-all provision in this bill, this amendment, any other way to finance or to economically contribute to this whole process. So that is covered in this.
Yes.
And then you have laws now coming in for cryptocurrency. So the legal process deals with tangibles. We talk about intangibles in our discussions and all that. But before the court, you talk of tangible, concrete things. So this law actually brings in concrete elements, tangible elements. How will you have a mistaken identity? The crime which is committed, because it's prohibition. So those things which are prohibited and they are subject to punishment, punishable things, that in general you call them crime. Now when a crime is committed, you have evidence. So when you have evidence, these notions of mistaken identity, etc., will be then examined there.
Right. General Pannu, I just have 60 seconds on the show now.
Okay. So it's like chicken and egg. The crime and the legal system work like that. But I think in this particular case, the Indian Evidence Act, in any case, would want the evidence to come up. Where technology is concerned, we have to make sure that we have labs and we have forensics, which actually indicate unmistakably who is the person who is liable for being booked against this act. Unless you can actually pin down and have the evidence, have the forensics in place, well, again, it's going to be very difficult, and the law will have to keep looking at evolving over a period of time. But I think this is where it is.
Absolutely. So as our guests are saying that this bill provides against the financing of weapons of mass destruction in line with India's international obligation. On that note, thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador Sharma and General Pannu. Next week, we'll return with incisive analysis of another important bill. Till then, take care and stay tuned to Sansad TV. Namaskar.